Welcome back to part 2 of my Evelyn Hugo review. In part 1, I talked about my overall thoughts in the book. If you want to see content warnings for the book, please go there. There will be spoilers in this section, so feel free to scroll along if you don't want to be spoiled for the book. In this part, I will be talking about the problems I had with this book, of which there are many. Let's start with the most glaringly obvious problems, which are the Latina and mixed race rep. There are plenty of mixed race black people who have talked about this on this app, so I'm just gonna leave that there. But the Latina rep is something I feel somewhat qualified to speak about. Specifically, just the sheer amount of stereotypes that are written about not just Evelyn Hugo, but every Latina character in this book is kind of abhorrent. I mean, you've got the abusive father, the only other Latina characters in this book, being, like, maids and, like, workers, and that's it. Also, her mom was a prostitute, so you just gotta add that there. And then Evelyn herself being a bunch of hobbled together stereotypes about Latina people. At least, those are the only references to her culture. And Taylor Jenkins Reid kind of homogenizes all of Latin America, not just culturally, but racially. It would honestly be easier to earn $1 million than to find specific cultural references to Evelyn not just being Latina, but Cuban, other than her saying the words, "I am Cuban." Also, just based on the way Evelyn is described, I'm fully convinced that Taylor Jenkins Reid doesn't understand the difference between race and ethnicity. Like, Evelyn's skin being constantly described as, like, the perfect combination, and her looks, the way they're described in general, just scream white supremacy. Because Evelyn is a white Latina. It just feels like the reproduced racial caste system. Beyond the horror that is representation of Latina people in this book, I just don't think, like, the subject of grooming was very well handled in this book. Like, there just isn't enough sensitivity or empathy given to Evelyn as, like, a survivor of that. And the fact that the first words that came out of Monique's mouth after Evelyn, like, very graphically described her experiences with grooming was that Evelyn was up to something is abhorrent. In particular, Monique's, like, characterization is very inconsistent. She's supposed to be portrayed as a very empathetic character, but that empathy is very rarely shown to Evelyn, when, like, it's actually needed. On top of that, while I do like Evelyn as a bisexual character, I don't think enough weight is given to the biphobia she experiences. Specifically, the way Celia treats her, it feels like sometimes Celia gets scot-free for being, like, biphobic. I also just hated the twist at the end that Monique's dad was Harry's lover, that Harry accidentally killed in a car accident. I think it was an incredibly poor choice and removed Monique as kind of like the neutral observer that she was, which I just think ruins the impact of a lot of this story. I'm gonna be honest, I found Monique's sections to be the most boring of the book. In the next part, I'll talk about the things I actually like.